Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Kieran Rogers.
I'm Louise Crossley.
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
And today we are talking about GA4 tips.
Right, we've been running lots of GA4 training courses, lots and lots of GA4 training courses. I'm sure everyone's aware. Universal Analytics, previous version of Google Analytics, ceased to collect data 1st of July. And now we should all be actively using Google Analytics 4. That's not the case, I'm pretty sure to say. There are lots and lots of people that still haven't made the move across, lots of people that have set it up, haven't got it set up properly, and so on as well. As going through the process of building courses, and you did this really early on, Kieran, when it was pretty painful to do it still, lots of things came out that we thought were quite good for people to know about. So I thought we'd go through and just give some tips on things that we picked up that we think are useful and hopefully will kind of help people as well.
Just also now, we will have another masterclass running in September by the time you're listening to this, so there is still time to join in on one of those.
Excellent. So targetinternet.com/GA4, you can book into those masterclasses, and we're running those on a revolving basis. They're half-day sessions, 100 UK pounds, trying to keep the cost really low for everyone. We've had loads and loads of people come into those, really enjoying those. They've been good fun as well. Okay, first things first. My impression, first of all, when we started looking at GA4 was that everyone must know Tag Manager to get this working properly, okay? And my viewpoint has completely changed on it. So it used to be previously, we would say, well, you can set Google Analytics up, you can set your goals up, but if you want to do really advanced things, then you're going to need to use Tag Manager. Pretty much, I would say the same thing applies to some extent as well, in that you can set this up, you can get a lot of the fundamental things of like conversion events working without any need for Tag Manager at all. Setting up via Tag Manager will give you more flexibility going forwards, but don't feel like, which is a lot of people who ask me this question, is that you have to do it that way. You're going to need Tag Manager if you want to track videos that aren't YouTube videos, if you want to track forms that are maybe in HubSpot or something along those lines, like external forms. But in reality, you can do a lot of things without the need for Tag Manager as well. And I don't know, Kieran, what was your impression first of all? Did you kind of get a feel?
Yeah, well, only because everybody was sort of doing it from scratch. So, I mean, right. there are two sort of development routes you can go with this. And then there's what I would term your average person in the streets way of doing it. Average person in the streets way of doing it isn't talked about by a lot of the experts online because it's quite basic. But if you use some of the enhanced measurement features of Google Analytics, actually you can do it. I was teaching a course this week and there was somebody there from a major banking brand, right? But they're like the banking group. Right, so they're not selling specific things to specific people. Yeah. It's much more of what you would term a brand site. And actually, it was really obvious to me. Actually, most of what you would need to measure, you can probably just do with, the standard events that are there out of the box. You can do things like measure people watching a video, or you can measure people downloading a form, or you can measure people filling out a form. Yeah. So like file downloads or PDF forms, anything like that. They're all there as events, and then you can just simply take those events and tick them as a goal. Job's a good one.
Yeah, conversion event. Yeah. Well, this is the other thing. It wasn't so obvious first of all. So it used to be you had destination goals. Like someone getting to a particular page, normally a thank you page. You can do exactly the same thing, but the process is you go through and you create a new goal. New conversion event. I'm going to stick to conversion events. Then you define that with a particular name. That's when you need to use, ideally, the recommended event naming conventions. So you need to go off, if you Google recommended events, it will list the naming convention. They've got conversion, lead generation, all those kind of things. So you go through and say, right, I want to create a new conversion event, or a new event in this case, first of all. And you create this new event and you say, I'm going to call it purchase, for example. Then you go through, right, the event is a page view. Great. And then you put a condition and the page view is on this particular URL. Okay, so you've said this is a purchase, it's when the page gets viewed and it's this particular page, and then you have got a purchase event. Then you go through and you make that a conversion event. Now, a purchase event would automatically be a conversion event, but irrelevant to that. That's the process you have to go through. It's not complicated once you've done it once, but it's not immediately obvious that's what you would need to do. And I really don't understand why Google have made this so complicated. So there's a couple of steps, but I think that once you get around how to set conversion events up, it's not quite as complicated as you might first think.
They sort of haven't made it complicated, but they haven't made it exactly easy.
No, that's it. It's not complicated, that's right.
I've got a few things that need speaking about here. Okay. I'm quite cross about this.
This is a bit of therapy session. Let's unpack your bag.
This is definitely squeeze the pus from the boil.
Nice. Thanks for that. Really, I preferred unpack your bag, but okay. You feel free to carry on.
So Google have forced this on everybody, and still to this day, if you go into the little, it's like a little, I can't remember what they call it. It's the little light bulb icon in your Universal Analytics, and you go through to that lovely section. There's a whole load of resources to learn it. They've still got the Analytics Academy, but they haven't updated it.
Right. Yeah. Some of the tutorials still.
So all the training in there is still, if you go in via, like you haven't set up GA4, which you know that's what we're wanting people to do. You go through, and it's still the only learning there is for Universal Analytics. That's poor, right? But then there is a little banner at the top that takes you through to a Google Garage course they've done, but it's just nowhere near as good.
Yeah,
the documentation
right now. I mean, it's okay, but it's nowhere near as feature rich.
Yeah.
No, there just isn't. And so I think a lot of this stuff is being missed, and I think this is a really poor show. Like, don't force everybody to move and then not provide really great training. Like Google, you need to put more resources into this.
Yeah, but they
really do.
I think realistically, the hand was forced to do this quickly because one, they had less cookie data. Two, they had the legal issues of the EU about how they were collecting data. So they had to do something, and they had to do it quickly. And maybe they could have resourced it differently, I'm sure.
Of course they
But the problem is you can't document something that's completed, and it's only just coming to a point where it's more robust as a product in the first place.
Yeah, because they're still constantly changing little bits, aren't they?
Yeah, so we'll do a training course, and I'll show them a screenshot, and people are like, it's not there? Man, okay. So, look, I think get your head around conversion events. It's go and set up a new event, add a filter to that, give it a name by recommended naming conventions, and then turn it into a conversion event. And if you follow that through, what we are going to do is post a little video of how to do that as well, because I think it's one thing that people, it's not complicated, but there's no clear instructions of how to do it from that point of view as well. So I think that's good. We're in the process now. I think in the next week or so we'll be finished, where we've got like 200 e-learning courses as part of targetinternet.com, and I think we were at 60 of them mention analytics. Every single one has needed to be changed. Now that's fine because it's great. Now we've got all these great e-learning courses, but
it's part and parcel of having the e-learning, isn't it?
But it's been a bit of a pain. So yeah, that's kind of happening as well. Couple of things that are worth looking at as well. Data retention. I hadn't realised how far-reaching this was because I assumed the data retention was only for custom data. Okay, but actually it goes a lot further. So you pointed this out to me. You go into data retention, and as standard, it's set to 2 months. I'm not sure if that's different on different people's accounts, but you can change it to 14 months, right? Do it. And the reason being is that data retention, a lot of that is the user signals. What's a user signal? Well, where Google hasn't got cookies to track someone directly, they're looking at user signals, and that will be people that are logged into their Google account doing things. So actually, this data really does enrich what you've got within your analytics. And it's custom data, but it's some other things as well. So I think the reality is that don't worry about what it includes, but more go to your settings, go to data retention, make sure it's set to 14 months.
So, and when we say do it, look around the corners with this as well. So when you make those changes, you're going to have to review your data policies and your privacy policies, all of that stuff, because you have to be transparent about what you're doing. So I wouldn't say just go in and switch it on. Like, we do want you to do that, but you're going to have to do it in a measured way that's not going to get you into hot water.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say with that is that we're not doing anything there that we haven't done before particularly, but we need more transparency on it as well. So look at the wording of your cookie policies and all those kind of things as well. It
seems to be more of an issue, like with the standard, because you've got two reporting areas. You've got the standard reports, and then you've got the explore reports. Yeah. But what I've found is that those data retention rules seem to affect the explore reports a lot more. Yeah. So it doesn't affect all data, and that just adds extra complication, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right. So the other thing as well that you mentioned enhanced measurement earlier on, right? As standard, you go and you set it up, and enhanced measurement will be switched on, and that's allowing you then to track beyond the page view, scrolls, PDF downloads, all that good stuff, watching videos that Kieran was just talking about.
Outbound clicks,
which
I love.
Really nice. You can see where they're clicking through to and so on. That's great, but that can cause you problems. So we had a thing, for example, we switched it on and we were getting thousands and thousands and thousands of form submissions. I'm going, what on earth is going on? And it turns out that it was a bit of Facebook code that was sitting on the page that every time that loaded, it looked like there were forms being submitted. So sometimes that's your place, if you're getting weird data, is to go in there and one at a time, switch off the things that it tracks. So in the settings, enhanced measurement, you can switch those on and off a little bit as you kind of go through that as well.
Video engagement as well. It only works with YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So if you're using anything else to play your videos, it's like, oh.
And that's where Tag Manager will come in. There are bits of code that you can use to track those videos as well. Remind me, Louise, what it's called for the new types of Google ad campaigns, the AI-generated campaigns, what that shows up as reporting in?
Cross-network.
I'm glad you remembered that, because otherwise I put you in a very difficult position.
Glad I remember.
Yeah, right. So when you go through and you do Performance Max campaigns...
We're of an age now where we need Louise to prompt what's in our head.
She's just hit us with a stick, right? Yeah.
You ready for your cocoa?
Yeah, it does feel a bit like that, doesn't it? I won't get into this, but my wife would feel very much the same way. As well. Sitting there going, like, just finishing my sentences. Going, just get on with it. Just say what you're going to say. Anyway... when you go through and look in there, you are going to see within your sources of traffic which ones are driving conversion. And if you're using any Performance Max campaigns, they are not going to show up as the individual elements. If you're not clear, Performance Max does display campaigns, it will do YouTube campaigns, paid search, and campaigns across the Google app, and Gmail as well, actually. But it won't break it down for you individually.
And Google Discovery.
Google Discovery as well, yeah. So it goes through in lots of places, but it won't tell you which one. It just tells you it was your Performance Max that's working. So it's worth being aware of that as well. Sessions versus user-related stats. This one can catch you out.
Yeah.
So, story for this, I wanted to go in and see the crossover between mobile and desktop users. And I went in and it said there's none. And I was like, what? Nobody on desktop is also using mobile? I find that hard to believe. I was looking at a session-based report, meaning... that one session, that one visit through the site.
They call it session scope or user scope, don't
exactly.
they? They're two different scopes.
Yeah, and rightly, if you visit once, you can't visit on two devices. So they would have been completely separate. Mm-hmm. Whereas a user scope, there would have been overlap between them as well. So definitely worth understanding. The reason it's worth understanding is that when you start getting to building custom reports, this really helps you. And then with that, the thing becomes really important then is understand the difference between dimensions and metrics. Kieran, do you remember how you described it? I remember. I'm just testing you because maybe I read it from your slides.
Metrics are number-based.
And the dimensions...
So a dimension tends to be a description.
Yeah,
because they're much more like there are words.
Yeah, but a dimension tells you something about something.
Yes, it does.
So you've basically got your default channel grouping. And then you've got words, so you've got Google, all those kind of things coming up as well. The only place it gets confusing, which was from your slide, which you explaining it was getting confusing, is when you've got a metric that's got a number. A dimension that's got a number
in it. Yeah.
So you've scrolled 25%, 50%, 75%. That would be a dimension, and then the metric would be the number of people.
Yes.
Why do you need to know the difference? Because when you're building custom reports, you can drag in dimensions and metrics, and knowing which to which is really important from that point of view as well. So. Bear in mind, dimensions are describing something about something, and the metrics is some sort of number that kind of goes with that. And then you can start to build out quite useful reports. I've had quite a few people coming to me and saying, I can't any longer report on X. You most likely can. You just need to do it as a custom report. It will be there, and it won't be too complicated to build. But a lot of the stuff that was in universalities is not there as a standard report within GA4.
We need to talk about sampling.
Yeah, go on.
So it's a massive problem if you've got small numbers of people visiting your website. Right?
Okay.
So if I look, let's say I've got a small e-commerce store and I only have a few hundred people a week. Maybe look at that. When you go in to run a report on GA4,
and this is the custom reports, isn't it? Rather than the standards.
If you actually no, on the standard ones as well, it can become an issue. Like if you're only looking at a couple of days worth of data,
right? There's
only a tiny number of people in there. Google very often won't show you the data that you, like if you zoomed in too much, it won't show you any data at all, even though you know there is some there. And it's because they're kind of running scared of showing individuals like personally identifiable information. Like if I can zoom in on too much detail, I might be able to tell who those people were that did that thing.
Okay.
Right. And so they hide it. Like you just
I haven't seen this.
Yeah, you just can't get to it, and it is a little bit frustrating. We've never had it. You always had sampling there, but it was never to the extent that it wouldn't show you any data at all. And I have seen that in some of the reports.
So it's interesting because what they were saying was that in the standard reports they're not going to apply sampling. So I'll have to go through and have a look at why that's the case if they're not showing up. Because I mean, what I've definitely seen is if you're building custom reports, you've got to look at how much sampling is going on with that as well. If you've got big numbers as well. What's really interesting as well is that you'll go in and it's really easy to edit the standard reports, right? So you go in and you can customize this report and change it.
You can't do much.
Well, but what the other problem is that anyone that can go in that's got admin access can do it, and it saves it over the original report, and then you can't get back easily unless you go down to the library and recreate it and all that kind of stuff as well. So if you haven't noticed it, the library button is basically your menus, and it allows you to change the menus, add custom reports, and all those kind of things. So there's some good stuff in there as well.
Probably means you're not going to want to be as generous with admin.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, just be more careful because it's much easier to break stuff than it used to be before from that point of view as well. Any other tips from you, Kieran? You think that what's your general experience of it in terms of you think it's better? You think it's not?
I do think it's better. I really love the smart attribution.
Okay.
I'm really very, very sold on this, but it's going to catch a lot of people out.
Okay.
Because, so what does that do?
So what it does is Universal Analytics, the old version, it's just died a death, used to very much work on last click attribution. So the last thing you do to create the session where you convert, that's what gets all of the credit, right? So let's say you come along to my website because you've clicked on an organic link that you found, interesting organic content. Come along, you read a load of stuff about Target Internet, you start looking at our courses, prices, you go away and you think about it. 3 days later, you come back and you click on a Google PPC advert because you've just banged in Target Internet. That's the first thing that comes up. Click, bosh, through to our website, you book a course, right? So last click attribution, that last session will all get accredited to the Google Ads. With smart attribution, which is the default that GA4 uses, and it doesn't have to, you can change it.
They're showing it in more places as well.
But the default is smart attribution. Smart attribution, much more sophisticated. It's going to look at you as a user. Remember, we have that user scope now. We're not just seeing lots of different sessions and not really tying them together. So for you as a user, the smart attribution is able to look at that and go, oh, interesting. Actually, Louise spent 20, 25 minutes on that first session, and she looked at the pricing page, and she did this. Then she came straight through from a Google Ads and bought. We're going to give the credit to the organic link.
Right.
Because that makes more sense. Like we're looking at lots more data. We're not just.
It can look at the relationship between
it does. And what I think is fascinating about smart attribution is it actually learns through observing lots of your users where the pinch points are and what needs to necessarily get credit. So actually, the smart attribution model it applies to Target Internet will be entirely different to another store.
What's nice is you get a diagram that says early, mid, and late funnel.
Yep.
And it's telling you which channels are having the most impact. And you can start to say, oh, okay, that one's there, but it's also there, and it's there more than I thought.
But the fly in the ointment here is everybody has been or will be downloading like month after month's worth of old GA3 reports.
Yeah, I was going to say this, right? It changes.
You can't compare, right? Because they're both using utterly different attribution systems, right? So come the end of July, if you start comparing this to the report you've downloaded from Universal Analytics, like they're going to be screaming in the streets, like, what is going on? Why is this happening? Like, why are our PPC campaigns down or up or, whatever's different? You know how animated people get about that, particularly at a senior level, right? Because has anybody thought to explain this to the senior guys? No, probably not.
Well, they can't explain it either because it's a black box algorithm that you haven't got complete visibility on.
No, but what you can explain, like this might be my advice, preempt this before those reports start doing the rounds, right? Because you'll be on a back foot then. Right, preempt it and explain, look, yeah, we are going to do as much as we can a like-for-like comparison, but big caveat here, the new system uses smart attribution. What is that? Okay, well, you're going to have to explain that to them. But you see, at a senior level, I think they'll love this a lot more because actually it's much smarter.
It is.
It kind of merges lots of different complex. Like when we used to run a session called The Least Wrong Thing, didn't we?
Yeah.
Which was all about looking at different attribution systems, and it was about picking the one that was least wrong. With smart attribution, I think it's sort of nailed it. And I've always wanted something that at board level can just give one set of answers.
Yeah.
Like this is pretty damn close to it. without getting into the pluses or minuses of, well, should we use first click or last click or time decay or any of these other models.
Just on that like-for-like comparison, this is not just about attribution though of your end outcomes. If you just look at page impressions, or if you look at they're not like-for-like sets of data.
Not at all.
And I think loads of people go, I'm going to get all this data out because then we can compare it. I wouldn't bother. But then I've seen people get themselves in trouble. They said, well, it's not like-for-like. We're going to forget about it. Someone will say to you in 2 years' time, have we got the analytics data from last year or the year before? And you'll go, we just didn't bother. We didn't save it. And actually, after a year, Google Analytics is going to get rid of that data potentially.
Well, I've not had any hard and fast rules on when. And actually, a lot of those things in about a year or maybe 6 months. They're guesses.
But also, it doesn't matter.
Google could remove it
it doesn't matter.
3 weeks' time.
I mean, what I would say is that if you're in a large organisation and you don't want to get yourself in trouble, I would find some way of exporting that data out. Okay, Google BigQuery is one way. The other thing is Fathom Analytics have now got a very easy way of going through, setting a Fathom Analytics account, and it will just pull it all out for you. You then got it if someone wants it, but you can't then use it to do like-to-like comparisons. So just be careful with that as you go through, and just think: do you really need that data? Is it useful? Just take a load of screenshots.
I had a similar experience when I was working in a beauty company. At the time, we were using Yahoo Analytics.
Yeah, right.
And Yahoo, in their wisdom, decided to shut that down. It's a shame because it was a good product. The best thing we did was to export each calendar month and store it in a spreadsheet, right? Because actually that gave us something that we could pull for. And we at that time we moved to Universal Analytics, right? But again, all the same things, like slightly different attribution, but at least we had like month by month benchmarks going back 24 months, and that was useful. Like it gave you somewhere to go. Personally, though, what we found was it was far better in the first. Like you had to wait a week, and then in the second week you could do a week-on-week comparison, and at the end of the second month you could do month-on-months. At the end of the second quarter you could do quarter-on-quarters. And though that's problematical because most businesses are much more seasonal than that, it did give you a little bit of a benchmark. But I think the earlier you have that grown-up conversation with decision makers who perhaps aren't aware of some of these subtleties, the better. Like ultimately, my belief is it is a much more fit for purpose measurement solution than we've ever had.
I agree. Just to kind of give people some context on this to finish things up as well. There's a Facebook, the Analytics Mania have a Facebook group where people go and ask lots of questions. And someone's come in and they posted a big question saying, hi, I've updated GA4, but I can't see the old stats. How do I solve that? Right, loads of laughs. I think it's really off, right? And then someone going, you can't. And then people going, how can I compare data? And then you can't. And they go, yeah, but how do I look at my old data? You can't, basically.
Computer says no.
Right. And we're all going, oh, it's so funny. They think you can compare your data. It's kind of a bit of a crazy situation where we find ourselves in, that this is kind of happened. And someone coming into this is kind of saying, what? And everyone's laughing because they think, no, you can't do that. But actually, it's not really reasonable. So I think it's a fresh start. That's what you have to look at. And my opinion of this, everywhere I've gone, is to say, look, we probably weren't doing a great job anyway. Take a step back. Start with what's the bottom of your funnel. What do you need? And you've said this to me. What is you need to track, and then work it backwards from there. But do it step by step at a time.
I've got a few tips for people in e-commerce.
Yep.
Right. So one of the challenges I've had is with a Shopify website. So there were lots of plugins for Shopify that attempted to marry things up with GA4. But what we found was a lot of them would only record what was happening on the website. So with this particular Shopify, we have a subscription plugin. Fine. We were using Recharge. So what that does is you sign up for a monthly or 6 weekly or 8 weekly subscription to particular products. Now, when those transactions take place, they happen offline. So GA4 was completely missing it. We tried various free plugins that looked like they would do it. It never computed, it never added up. We finally found a lovely service called Little Data. And though it's paid for, you do have to pay for it, but actually what it does is pretty good. And that literally solved all of these issues overnight, because it's actually able to pull server level data rather than just looking at the website side.
Right.
It's really very good.
One other tip then with that, GA4 is not always the place to record everything.
No.
And actually what I would say is if you're using Stripe or PayPal or anything like that, profit well. Profit well for e-commerce and for subscription-based services, truly incredible bit of software, and most of it's free as well. So take a look at that, and that can be average lifetime value of a customer, monthly recurring revenue rates, all those kind of things you can find. So it's really good. And as ever, we'll put this stuff in the show notes, targetinternet.com/podcast. You can find all of those things. We'd love to hear your tips on this. When we say we'd love to hear them, we generally do reply to everyone. And we've got some freebies we're sending out for people that kind of submit things as well. So do that. Thank you very much for listening to the Digital Marketing Podcast.
Please subscribe for more videos like this and visit targetinternet.com for more free digital marketing resources.